Something almost no one has been talking about is who was actually the one going and getting these girls and boys, and I think I found one of the most likely answers to that question. Of the 4 Epstein women, there is one that stands out above and beyond to me at this moment, and that is Nadia Marcinko. Most aren't going to recognize that name. I didn't at first either, because suspiciously, in my over 2 hours of Epstein content, not a single time in any of my research did her name or image pop up organically. And yet she is a through line throughout this entire story. Her photo is splattered across a bunch of random images tied to the Epstein case, and much like Epstein's personal history, initially she can be somewhat difficult to pin down. She has 3 main names as well as a bunch of nicknames, but she's most commonly known as Nadia Marcinko or Nadia Marcinkova. If you were to look up that name right now, you'd be met with countless headlines, all repeating essentially the same thing. You'll be notified that she's a pilot or a former Epstein slave, maybe both, or one of the chief recruiters for little boys and girls. It's kind of a mixed bag of what you'll get told. But strangely, she's not one of the things above, she's all of the above. In theory, that is. We don't know much about her life history, but we do know that she was born in Slovakia in 1986, a country that has gone by over half a dozen different names since the beginning of the last century, but there is a chance this is merely a cover story, because we aren't even sure how old Nadia is, if we're being honest, and Epstein tells a different story about how Nadia came to be in his entourage. One of Epstein's many victims tells us that while being given the Epstein treatment, he stated that he purchased Nadia Marcinko from her father to be his Yugoslavian slave. That's right, purchased from old Daddy-o. Now that's kind of a hard thing to pin down exactly who said this. I've seen several sources of that information, and it's just been repeated by so many others over time that by proxy of how many people have said it, it's become somewhat of a fact. Although we aren't totally certain that's actually how Epstein came to have Nadia. But the other main reason people think this is because Nadia herself has the reputation of being a victim. And that would be because she stated she was, or more so her legal team when the Epstein case began heating up, stated that she was. And so far, based on how little we actually know about her, I think it's fair to doubt whether or not she's a victim, and as we continue, that's going to become even more questionable. However, let's say she was a victim. It definitely didn't last very long, because she clearly moved from victim to victimizer very quickly, so quickly you think this was a 300-meter dash. In the early 2000s, we have reports from young girls that Nadia was at Epstein's properties, forcing them to engage in disgusting acts with Epstein. Despite having been purchased in 2001 by Jeffrey, therefore, only 2 and change years after she became his quote-unquote slave, she was already deep into violently abusing kids, which is a little too suspicious for my taste. We also have it on good authority, based on victim testimonies, that Nadia was raping these children herself. And one specific testimony disgustingly describes how a 16-year-old was forced to perform sexual acts with Nadia to, quote, completion, at which point Epstein began raping her violently, holding her face down as she screamed for help and begged for it to stop. Eventually, he did stop, said sorry, and bought her a car to use. And this girl had come to Epstein's Palm Beach property after being lured to the home under the pretense of giving massages, which, come on people, let's raise our daughters better than falling for that one. And this report about what Nadia was up to came to light in 2004, 2005, and other victim testimonies report them being abused by Nadia in 2005, meaning at most Nadia was a late-stage teenager when this was all happening. And we are also aware that the flight manifests, or really the portions of said flight manifest that we've been given, going all the way back to 03, note Nadia as both a passenger and crew, that's what the NM means, which she wouldn't be getting listed as if she were a child slave. If or how she went from slave to enslaver is up to you, but this Nadia history lesson is going to make progressively less sense as we continue from here on out. We are aware that as early as the first softball investigation and inquiry done by the Palm Beach Police Department in 2008, that Nadia appeared to be living at Epstein's Palm Beach home, treating it like her own. She showed up on hidden cameras that were later seized, appears in dozens of victim and helper testimonies, and was even ordering packages from Armani Exchange to the house. And yet Nadia was never arrested and never interrogated. The police did ask her some questions, and she has a deposition on record. However, she was never charged with a single thing, despite a countless and growing number of little girls reporting her as having helped Epstein acquire and them, and that Nadia herself had them, including violently with objects, according to one little girl's testimony. And with that in mind, it seems like Epstein and Nadia deserve adjoining zappy chairs, but no. In fact, for no apparent reason, Nadia not only didn't get charged, the serial rapist and trafficker also got immunity from all past, present, and future charges when Epstein got his joke sentence in 2008. The one where Alex Acosta, in charge of prosecuting Epstein, gave him a sweetheart deal and stated that he, as the Attorney General, one of the highest positions in the land, was told to back off because Epstein was, quote, intelligence. which Acosta, like a good little spook, did. And now 6 years later, in a new set of documents, we find that Alex Acosta is denying having ever said that, despite everyone and their mom reporting otherwise. Just making sure we're all on the same page, because Nadia also got this splendid deal, and the immunity came without even giving a single bit of valuable information, swearing to testify, or leaving her old life as a diddyist behind. In fact, this alleged slave was so loyal to Epstein that she pled the fifth anywhere from 42 to 90 separate times when being deposed. We would know for certain if we actually possessed the full deposition. And that document, which contains a deposition, is interesting because despite being over 2,000 pages long, including eyewitness testimonies, the depositions of Ghislaine and other people who were related to the incident, and obviously Nadia, it would appear that when you get to Nadia's section, you notice that a lot of chunks are missing, and it doesn't seem like we actually get the full thing, which that can't be right, just some food for thought. But it is because of that I'm not really able to tell you exactly how many times she pled the fifth. We just know that it was a lot, and for basically every question except for what's your name. And as an aside, if there are any lawyers watching this video right now, I'd be curious and be grateful if you could comment below if it's even possible for a foreigner to plead the fifth. Who knows? Before I get off track though, let's veer back on course. A further reason to question just who Nadia is and how she got to Epstein is that despite having this immunity, she not only pled the fifth all those times in her deposition, but she also has yet to give a single name, a location, address, or even the tiniest bit of information, even 16 years after being given immunity, about what was going on. And who the perpetrators are, or who the girls are, how they got them, what went on, where the lists are, or where and how the bodies were disposed of. That's another level of evil, as she is probably one of only a handful of people outside of Epstein himself who knows each person on the list and could help us all out a lot in uncovering who was involved. But she didn't. Nadia remained loyal to Epstein, visiting him over 70 times, which is a minimum of once a week, while Epstein was supposedly serving a prison sentence, but was actually just hanging out in his custom-made wing of the Palm Beach Police Department back in 2008. And 70 times is more than Epstein's other top conspirators combined and multiplied visited him. Nadia was then with Epstein all the way until what was likely his staged death in the Manhattan Metro Correctional Facility, visiting him and calling him there and being among his final phone calls. After so many of his former friends had abandoned him and left him to his own devices in 2019, Nadia stuck by his side. That's the kind of loyalty one would expect to see from a band of soldiers lost in the jungles of Vietnam in the 1970s. Not what you'd expect for a girl who was brutally abused for a decade and had been given immunity from all crimes she was accused of. Even stranger, despite all this time by Epstein's side, supporting and continuing to facilitate him, Nadia managed to remain mostly out of the limelight. And like most people, myself included, as discussed, they likely didn't even know this chick's name until 2024, early January to be more precise, when a host of Epstein and co-related documents were released. Obviously, Nadia's name was in there innumerable times and implicated her in the sorts of crimes that an electric chair seems far too kind for. This is all to suggest that we really don't know who this woman was, and the record seems very bizarre. To the point that I am unwilling to call her a victim because of the things she has done to little boys and girls. But despite her having not been a victim previously in my mind, that does not preclude her from being one now, as since shortly after some of the Epstein documents dropped in January of 2024, Nadia Marcinko went missing. No one has seen or heard from her in almost 2 years as of writing this document, since January of 2024. Her social media is inactive, her neighbors report no one being home at any of her addresses, ones which I might add it's presumed Epstein paid for, and as far as we are aware, not even friends or family have heard from her, including the father who, according to Epstein, he bought Nadia from. It would seem that really and genuinely, no one knows where Nadia is. And this is where our story is going to take a turn. To have one of your key witnesses to an international child trafficking ring just disappear after documents are released that would implicate her and maybe even force her to give more information about Epstein. To our knowledge, Nadia has no reason to run herself. Most didn't know who she was, few were where to find her, and even if a judge did want to subpoena her, she's been wrongfully granted immunity. And yet, despite such a prominent figure going missing, related to a massive criminal enterprise, there has been no search, no questioning, and no investigation. Indeed, it would appear that the mainstream slot media decided to go no further than to say that Nadia is missing, and then let the story rest. Which makes me suspect that she's either wherever Epstein and friends are today, or she was silenced as she knew too much. And I'm beginning to wager more and more that it's the second. If we review Nadia's bizarre timeline thus far, a number of red flags drop on the field, but the biggest one is how can one purchase a child from someone's family? That's despicable. To sell your child, are you insane? What is wrong with you? But there's really no other path to take here because the alleged father, who I will pick bones with shortly, claims that it's untrue. However, one must also ask in the same breath, what other possibility is there for your 15-year-old little girl to go missing or to disappear, and you file no reports? One can realistically only assume he was involved. And if the father was involved, then for none of the family or friends to try and find her is beyond strange. And yet that seems to be what the prevailing narrative is suggesting as relates to the father and how Nadia ended up with Epstein. He didn't sell her, don't worry, Nadia just somehow ended up in Epstein's hands. Literally. But I'm not really one to bite that crap narrative, so I decided to see what else we could find out on the father, and maybe that would give us some clues, since Nadia herself is pretty much a blank space in this story. And considering I'm not Slovakian, I am limited to what I can do here and find online. However, I noticed some discrepancies even despite the language barriers, and what I came to, as we'll discuss, is that this supposed father seems like a figment. His name is Peter Marcinko and is an architect in Prešov, Slovakia, or so we are told, because his entire online identity seems kinda contrived. If we look at his business contact address, following it to Google Earth leads us to a random Slovakian art gallery. He supposedly owns it, but it's also listed as the office for his architecture business, which just doesn't really make sense in my mind. And so I tried to find out more, only to notice there are very few photos of the man, which tends to be a sign that we're onto something, especially when his Facebook has hundreds, maybe even 1,000 plus photos of buildings, many of which look like stock images, but only a handful of photos of him. The work history suggests that someone named Peter Marcinko has done some building and has completed some buildings, but I can't really tell for sure because everything is in Slovakian. So any Slav viewers, I would be grateful to know what you find. There are also evidently no pictures of Peter with Nadia on his Facebook, despite there being hundreds of photos, and despite pictures of this Peter fellow's son and his grandchildren being on his Facebook profile. Moreover, some people online claim to have found photos of Nadia and her dad together on his Facebook, but these shots that I've seen came from a distance, and it's somewhat hard to tell if it's actually Nadia or not. Moreover, I've combed through all of the photos on Peter's Facebook twice and found none that matched the ones reported to be Nadia, so either that's a lie or they have since been taken down, which is kind of strange either way. However, what got me most though were two things. One, there's an article published that claimed the father's address was X, I'm obviously not going to give it, and it had a picture of the property, or at least it supposedly did, but when one pulls up the picture of the property, it's not of anything but a street and some random Slovakian warning sign to drivers, so not really evidence that he actually lives there, mostly because there isn't a there. And reason number two, all the profiles online for Nadia's dad use the name Peter Marcinko, which may not seem weird at first, but on a second glance, we have to remember that that's not Nadia's real name. Her actual name is Nadia Marcinkova, so why then is her father listed under the fake name that Nadia took on after she was allegedly sold to Epstein? That doesn't really compute there, matey. And if we choose to believe that Nadia simply vanished into the ether, which I don't know what other option there is here, based on the dad saying that he didn't sell her to Epstein, then Peter, while supposedly not knowing where his daughter was, that being with Epstein, changed his name to match his missing daughter's new name that she had taken on while on the other side of the earth, where he supposedly didn't know where she was. Yeah, okay. Clearly that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Also worth note, Pete likes his creepy art just like Epstein, including that of nude individuals wearing superhero costumes. You know, superheroes, the things for kids, and we're talking about Epstein, aren't we? Huh, not a weird coinky dink at all. My overall conclusions here, though, is that it seems like someone wants us to find this account and then not dive any deeper, and there is enough here truly to make the argument either way that this is her dad, and for the other side to say, no, this can't be her dad. And on that note, washing that all aside for the time being, I really just wanted to know what was going on and if this was the right guy we were looking at. So I decided to message Papa Pete and discuss the sale of his child Nadia, as is popularly reported, although he denies it, and see if there's anything I could learn. I really just want to know that guy's side of the story, to be fair. He, however, did not respond, so I tried then messaging his son. Now his son is linked, as I briefly mentioned, on Peter's profile, and so I thought, you know what, it doesn't hurt to try. I mean, after all, Nadia would be this man's sister. And so I messaged him, a very kind, not too long message, just going, hey man, suspicious of all the stories going on around Nadia, and your dad's selling her. Do you have any information you can give me? Because I don't think he's gonna respond to me. And I kid you not, within 24 hours, I go back to see if he's responded to the message, and suddenly Peter's son's account is now inaccessible, so he either privated it, blocked me, or deleted his Facebook. I don't know, but his son's account doesn't show up on Peter's Facebook as a friend anymore. So I don't know what happened there, but once again, if you guys somehow watch this, Peter and your son, please reach out to me. I want to know more. And I'll make sure to keep you guys watching this updated on if anything else happens as relates to this family, because we deserve to know more information at this point, considering Nadia is gone. But until then, I am going to have to assume and wager that Peter is to some regard a facade, because your daughter doesn't just disappear, someone knows where she is, and I wager he knew exactly what he was doing, but consider that all speculation. And so now if the father isn't genuine and Nadia has been misattributed to him or was an asset of some kind, that would explain how Nadia could go missing without family coming after her, as it would seem no family ever came after her. Although I find the use of the term missing to be a little bit silly in this context, as we shall come to see, since Nadia was very much not missing. We know her name and person was popping up on American soil in the early 2000s as she did some modeling for major brands while not dating children. She was also making appearances on magazine covers prior to and post starting to rape kids, so she was a pretty well-known figure. Personally though, what I know her best from is her time as a pilot for Epstein, as Nadia will later go on to say that when she grew tired of modeling, she was ready for a longer runway. And if I were a betting man, I would wager 50-1 odds that that whole pilot thing is a cover story and there's only one kind of cockpit she knows how to operate. That one was a thinker. Just make sure you're paying attention, because here's where things get really bizarre if they weren't already. In her late teens and early 20s, we have photos of Nadia dressed up as a pilot taking clearly staged glam shots outside of Epstein's plane, on Epstein's plane, and even in the cockpit, which seems like the kind of stuff a very unqualified young girl would do after becoming a private file pilot on a $40 million private jet. After all, Wikipedia does call her a pilot, so it must be true. But if we look at Wikipedia a little bit closer, we're going to notice the beginning of an odd rabbit hole. Wikipedia references Nadia as being an FAA certified pilot, rated for single and multi-engine planes, and that's okay, I suppose, but unsurprisingly, the source of that information is bogus, because it's either Nadia directly or Nadia via interviews. But I'm generous, so let's say it's true, and let's assume that Nadia is FAA certified. Just because she's certified doesn't mean she can actually fly a plane. Let's be realistic, Epstein clearly can get whatever he wants. Just ask Prince Andrew or any of the last 5 presidents. So a pilot certification would be child's play. Perhaps that's a bad choice of words though. But it is important because it created an extremely effective cover for Nadia, which we'll get into more, for which she is still benefiting from, because looking up her name, she is practically always referred to as a pilot foremost. And so I went to the FAA database and looked Nadia up, and lo and behold, she does actually possess certifications for several different ratings on planes, but that's not what really interested me. On her FAA cert page, it now says that she's a second class pilot, and this is what happens when you miss a medical review exam. You go from first class, which she originally was, to second class, and then to third, the difference being what you are quote-unquote allowed to fly. Well, Nadia appears to have downgraded classes from first to second, which almost makes sense initially, but not really, because if she did her last exam sometime in 2023, you know, before she went missing, then she would be a third class pilot at this point in time. But she isn't, she's still a second class. And that's because the FAA database has Nadia's most recent medical exam as having been in August of 2024, 7 months after she went missing. So where then is Nadia, where she's still fine taking medical exams to fly, and how has she managed to go completely under the radar, pun intended? Oh brother, this guy stinks! It seems a bit odd to me, but at the very least we know that Nadia has been missing now since August then, rather than January as originally noted. But this also means that unless Nadia wants to get downgraded again, she should already have shown up at an exam site, but she hasn't. Therefore, her certification should soon either drop to third class, or we're going to see them renewed in sometime in this year, which would be a pretty clear signal that she is no longer with us if she doesn't, or she's not maintaining the pilot facade anymore, or on the other hand, that she is still alive somewhere in hiding, perhaps with Epstein and company. And as we've discussed for the previous reasons, this pilot facade is extremely important for Nadia, but it's far more so for the following reasons, because Nadia has an interesting online history. As in the early 2010s, Nadia was best known by her alias Gulfstream Girl, generating a following as a pilot of a Gulfstream jet. I know, very clever. And obviously we know that Gulfstream belonged to Epstein. The name Gulfstream Girl continued in use until 2013, when Gulfstream sued Nadia for copyright infringement and profiting off of their trademarked name. The two parties settled outside of court, and Nadia transitioned to the name Global Girl. And around that same time, Nadia founded a company named Oviloop, which is externally at least how most presume that she made her money. Ostensibly, Oviloop is a hodgepodge of weird excuses phrased as a business. They sell you pre-existing marketing plans, help you design your own marketing plans, help plan events, tailor ads for your audience, charter planes, set up booths for flight events, and sell flight lessons 50-90% off. And all the marketing, mind you, is for aviators and aviation companies only. See what I mean? A little weird. But even stranger is that Oviloop positions itself via its advertisements in a very disturbing way, to say the least. In 2012, there was a promo reel depicting their stewardesses wearing Oviloop uniforms. These uniforms were very unique, is one way to put it, and seemed like costumes in all honesty. You know, like something a hooker would be wearing for 15 seconds while pretending to be a stewardess. What is stranger though is that it doesn't take a decade of detective work to notice that it would appear that Oviloop is not selling cheap flight lessons, but see for yourself what I mean, because if a picture is worth 1,000 words, these videos are each a book's worth.
Welcome to Oviloop, your collective buying website for anything aviation. We offer deals on flight lessons, pilot accessories, fuel, FBO services, charter flights, and even small aircraft. Our deals are usually 50 to 90% off. That means whether you want to learn to fly, charter an airplane, or to see more girls like me, Oviloop can help. You can even vote for your favorite deal attendant and win special prizes. Our membership is completely free. Our deals are unbeatable. And there's no catch. So what are you waiting for, Captain? Subscribe to our newsletter and get in the loop.
Hi, welcome to Cole's Flight School on Oviloop.com. My name is Ashley and I'm your deal attendant. Anyone who claims that humans were not meant to fly never experienced the thrill of their own successful landing. If you've been bitten by the flying bug and you want to add multi-engine to your pretty green license, this is your opportunity to do it at 50% off. You don't see that very often. Today's deal includes all the necessary ground school and 15 hours of multi-engine flight training. Get ready to fly big boy airplanes. To purchase this deal, you must hold at least a private pilot license and a current medical certificate. Don't miss out and click on that big blue button. You know you want to.
Hi, welcome to Classic Flight Training on Oviloop.com. My name is Claire and I'm your deal attendant. With today's deal, you can channel your inner Top Gun, climb into the cockpit, and learn to fly an airplane. You can even practice saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." The flight lasts 1 hour under the supervision of an FAA instructor, begins with a ground school lesson, and ends with a new perspective on what you were born to do. And remember Top Gun? Clearly your attractiveness increases with every flight under your belt. Just remember to wear your aviators and pick a cool call sign, Captain.
Welcome to Oviloop, your collective buying website for anything aviation. We offer deals on flight lessons, pilot accessories, fuel, FBO services, charter flights, and even small aircraft. Our deals are usually 50 to 90% off. That means whether you want to learn to fly, charter an airplane, or just see more girls like me, Oviloop can help. You can even vote for your favorite deal attendant and win special prizes. Our membership is completely free, our deals are unbeatable, and there is no catch. So what are you waiting for, Captain? Subscribe to our newsletter and get in the loop.
Alright, now that we've all lost a bit more confidence in the goodness of man, I think two things are obvious. This is a weirder, grosser, pseudo-sexual reference to disturbed sexuality than the bottom of this printing of the 118th page of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Beautiful and Damned. What I'm trying to say though, is these girls are, to my observation and many others, clearly the item for which is being sold, and I might add, perhaps are even unknowing of that fact at the point of recording, rather than the deal on flight lessons being offered at face value. The reasons should be obvious. I mean, we all have eyes and ears, but I'll highlight a few. The girl's demeanor, the inflection, the language, statements like, "Don't you want to see more girls like me?" or "You get more attractive the more times you fly," or "Press the button you know you want to," or "Big boy," or suggesting that you can just spend time with the flight attendants if you want, or just simply watch them. I mean, the list does go on from there. And obviously, no one is selling flight lessons for 50 to 90% off, because how are you making money? A sort of important aspect to business, I might add. But the questions and obvious implications become deeper, darker, and more disturbing when we begin to ask where these may have been recorded. We know very little from the video itself. Obviously, it doesn't give us much, but I will do my best. First off, the amount of echo in the room.
And there is no catch.
Suggests it's a larger room which is fairly to completely barren of furniture, and a fan blowing in the background makes me think it's somewhere warmer. It could be anywhere, but knowing this business, Avi loops right back to Epstein. I would suggest one of his islands, or perhaps Zorro Ranch itself, the one we discussed so long ago it seems like. But that is speculation admittedly, because there's something more important that we can distinguish. I'm going to play a few segments of the videos for you again, and I want you to listen really carefully to the background audio.
To your pretty green license, this is your opportunity to do it at 50% off. To your pretty green license.
You heard that right? A woman, let's be honest here, presumably a young girl in the background moaning, as advertisements are being recorded that ostensibly are selling flight-related products, but are implying something much more sordid beneath the surface. And if this isn't the perverted Epstein and co crap that we know and have become familiar with, then I don't know what is, because how much more obvious can they be? Well, except for that this isn't the only video with such noises, so we can presume it's not an accident or a one-off, which not really something you can have a one-off of, but besides the point, take a listen to this one.
That means whether you want to learn to fly, charter an airplane, or to see more girls like me, Avi can help. More girls like me, Avi can help.
In this video, you can hear what appears to be a dude moaning. This makes it further clear that the girls are what are for sale, and these girls we see, I presume, are just merely a few of a wide selection for purchase. Also worth noting that these girls are incredibly skinny, don't look super healthy, and are clearly reading from a script. All things that make me very uncomfortable watching these videos. And map that to the fact that on the original Avi Loop website, there are archives showing you that you can win one-on-ones with what they call interviews with the girls. Yeah, that's not right at all. Somehow though, it gets even creepier with what we notice as we continue. I cannot take full credit for this. Some others who have been down this rabbit hole as well noticed this, and there's also a commenter on the video who pointed it out. However, if you look very closely at the blonde girl, who appears taken aback for a moment after the moaning is heard, one may notice that she looks quite familiar. I hope not personally. If so, I am very sorry. But for those into researching mysteries online, she might. And that would be because this young woman looks a lot like an older Ashley Martinez, who went missing from the local Krug Park pool in St. Joseph, Missouri on July 6th of 2004. At the time, Ashley was 15 years old, and it is one of the strangest cases I've read about. That being said, I want you to warp back to the summer of 2004. I was 1 year old, just for frame of reference, and real quick, let's think on this situation. You are simply a spectator at the Krug Park local pool in the city of St. Joseph, Missouri. And that day, you see Ashley Martinez with her brother. You are vague family friends with them, so you recognize them and just give them a wave. And in between bouts of reading your book and taking a dip in the pool to cool off, you notice that Ashley has borrowed a phone from her friend in an odd manner. You then overhear Ashley's friend ask who it was because she doesn't recognize the number that Ashley had dialed. You find that odd, but you're just overhearing, so you kind of blur it out and just keep reading your book. However, it doesn't take much longer than that, because a car will pull up outside the park and you'll see Ashley briefly as she walks away from the pool all alone and proceeds to get into that distant car with an older man. You don't recognize the man, so for an instant you think about stopping this whole situation because something just seems very wrong to you, but you decide not to, thinking, hey, maybe it's a family friend. And that decision to not intervene and continue reading your book is one that haunts you every single day and sometimes keeps you up at night, because Ashley has now been missing for over 20 years. And that's the gist of her story. Some facts worth providing, and I promise there is a point to including Ashley's history. For our purposes, I want to note the following. Ashley was unfortunately not unfamiliar engaging in some semblance of relationship with older males. I don't want to suggest anything beyond the fact that she did at the age of 12, while at a sleepover at a friend's house, sneak off and get into the waiting car of a 21-year-old outside. Ashley's mom would later on call to check in on her at the sleepover, only to find out what had happened. And then Ashley's mom went on to call the police, and they said they could only go and find her if her mother reported Ashley as missing, so she did. And the story gets even weirder in that Ashley reappeared 10 hours later, walking up to the front door of a friend's house of one of her brothers. And so now we have a bit of a theme here of older males taking advantage of this young girl. We also know that Ashley dreamed of becoming a model. And modeling is one of the common lures of traffickers, most prominently Epstein, using the likes of Jean-Luc Brunel, as well as many others. There's also this interesting bit of information, though, for our case that arises when we start doing some basic math. Going back to the Avi Loop advertisements, the girl in this video, in my mind, and many others, cannot be older than 22 or 23. And she shares an extremely similar facial structure and physique to Ashley, and would be the exact right age, as this was recorded in 2012. And so if Ashley went missing at the age of 15 in 04, add 8 years to that when this was recorded and uploaded, that would make Ashley 23. But man, no matter what, if this is Ashley or not, what brings a grown man to the edge of tears is telling you the following: that out of all the names for all the women in all the countries on earth, this one decides to introduce herself on the video as,
My name is Ashley and I'm your jail attendant.
and it's not like Epstein was very secretive either. It was pretty much an open secret what he did. And to bring it full circle, let's not forget whose company is being advertised for here. Nadia Marcinko, the model and child rapist who used her connections and time as a model and quote-unquote pilot to lure girls in. And so I dare say a lot of dots are beginning to connect here. So there were two things I wanted to do next. The first was to contact the police in St. Joseph, Missouri with these findings. Okay, I'm gonna interrupt here and I'm gonna say that I actually ended up getting a call back from the detective. Originally when I recorded this I hadn't. So I want to add that we actually had a really great conversation this morning as of the time I'm editing this. I'm not going to say his name, but he is the detective on this case, so if you look him up you will find him. He seems like a really genuine guy, very curious for what I'd found and about this video. So I sent it to him and he said was that, okay, this is interesting. They always like to follow up on leads. And he did admit, as we'll get on to later, the girl we can see here could very well be her later on. I mean, we don't really know exactly what she would look like, but they do share a lot of similarities. The fact they have the same name is really weird. And then I asked him for a comment on record, and he did give me one, and that's here for you guys now. What do you think of the video? And if it's her?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's some things that we need to look into. This is possibly, 8 years later, we're going to have to match up the facial features and see. But there's always that potential. We're always going to look into these leads when we get them.
Awesome. That's a great answer. Thank you. I'm going to interject as I'm editing that conversation. I also wanted to add that he said that he's going to share these with Ashley's mom, which seemed like a pretty big deal. So I thought I would let you guys know that. All in all, we can't know for certain, but I have a special request for you guys now. There's a lot of information out there online, and we only know these videos exist because people search for them. If you've made it this far and you have any sleuthing abilities, I'd be so grateful if we could crowdsource this thing and look up for any other videos on this, because we're fortunate that Ashley has some birthmarks and some scarring and piercings that would make it very obvious whether or not it was her if we got another angle of this video, or if there were other Loop advertisements that we're unaware of at this point in time. So if you guys can find anything, please let me know, and immediately send it to the email on screen for the detective I met with. And then also send it to me and comment below and send it to my email so we can also keep getting this information out there. Because there's a very real possibility that at the very least Ashley Martinez lived for longer than we might suspect. And there's a very real possibility she could still be alive, considering how big of a network we're talking about here with Epstein. So, unexpected, that video was recorded 8 years after she went missing, and it has now been another 13 since that video was recorded. We can't know where Ashley is. But if she is out there, there's no audience that I believe is more capable of finding this than you guys. So please see what you can find, because we didn't know these videos existed until recently. I mean, then anything else could be out there, truly. I don't want to repeat myself, but once again, thank you for the detective for getting back to me. It gave me a little bit more faith in some feds. I want to thank you guys in advance for everything you're going to find. Any tip, no matter how small or big, if you know anything, if you know somebody who knows something, please do not hesitate to reach out. This is the chance to really help someone and their family out. I think we should take advantage of that opportunity. Thank you so much, guys. Let's get back into it. So it's now at the point that I'm pretty confident saying I think that's actually Ashley in this video, meaning that in 2004 she didn't go missing but was abducted and has since been the victim of some of the most unimaginable acts ever on earth, and then was probably brainwashed to some extent and became part of the operation, getting pimped out via very creepy videos pretending to be a stewardess. But it does go further. We are also aware that Ashley had bipolar disorder, so messing with her and breaking her mind wouldn't have been too difficult, as she's a little bit more malleable. And even darker, we know what car Ashley got into that day and who owns it, and yet nobody has been arrested for the crime. And that just seems pretty outlandish to me. But I'm not making any accusations, let me make that clear. It is worth noting though that whoever was driving that car could easily have just been a transport for Epstein, and then she was flown wherever on earth on whichever one of his planes that he wanted her to go. And speaking of planes, back to Nadia herself, we know she was a model, but the pilot thing, Not so much. It seems like a fancy cover, and I think we can prove that because of all the videos of her on planes, for which there are more than you would anticipate considering she's tried to delete her entire online presence. The videos we have archived, there's not a single one of her flying a plane alone. Not one. If you can find one, let me know, because she seems to always be the co-pilot or is pretending to pilot the plane. And even funnier, when she's about to take effective control of the plane, as in switch something like the accelerator, there are these well-timed cuts to make sure we don't actually see her flying the machine. Getting focused though, during the same time she is raping and trafficking children, Nadia is also keeping up this weird fake pilot and front company act, flying in planes of various kinds and pretending to be this global girl figure. She's doing all these odd things, but what I argue might be the weirdest is she plays this main character role in a really poorly executed pilot prank video, which is also an advertisement for a mobile game back in the 2010s, where I kid you not, Nadia dresses up like a child and pretends to be unable to fly planes. The title of the video is Nerd, but yeah, the kid's jacket and teddy bear and glasses and pigtails, yeah, you're not trying to look like a nerd, you're trying to look like a child. And this video, for the few who have seen it, was a little too on the nose, as they're commenting the same thing. It seems to show us once again that Nadia certainly is not a pilot.
By 436, yes. Well, you'll see it's not quite the same, my dear. My dear, my dear, my dear. Whoa! Stop! Stop! Whoa!
Alright, now I can try one.
Okay, you want to try one? Okay, here are playing. Wow, where did that come from? That was pretty amazing. What's the how to do that?
I'm actually an ATP and an aerobatic pilot. So say hi to the camera.
Good head!
Alright, what?
You guys got me. I've been had. That's all there is to it. Great job.
Some of you may be wondering why.
Notice not once do we see her hands on the controls of that plane steering it, nor do her arms even appear to be on the controls. And this same trend can be found across all of her content. Not once is she flying alone, which is a dead giveaway to me that she can't actually fly a plane, and that her FAA certifications are frauds. But even stranger are some of the locations she chooses to fly to. My favorite, due to its obviousness, being the most infamous, world-renowned island, which, if I'm not mistaken, can be seen right out of the front window of the plane in this one video. But not to fret, you guys, it's all a mistake. If you recall, Nadia's lawyers were kind enough to let us know that she is the real victim. This all is very intriguing, but one must wonder why then this is all going on. Typically, a trafficking ring doesn't make itself as public as possible, and in Nadia's case, she went so hard for the cover that she generated an online presence and persona that eclipsed the actual Gulfstream brand in size, at least on Facebook. And realistically, the only reason to do this is to make an extremely complex cover story, because to most, including all the articles from the mainstream media one can find, Nadia is referred to as a pilot and in most cases a victim in the same report. And so this cover story has worked. There's an article I found from the early 2010s which contains an interview with Nadia under her new nom de plume, Global Girl, after being sued by Gulfstream. And it, along with some other information, shows us that the cover was better than one could hope. And it is worth noting that in the interview, or one of the interviews, Nadia was shopping for a new plane for a client, which we can pretty healthily assume was Epstein. But in the article, Nadia goes on a long rant about how she wants to inspire little girls to become pilots and she wants to be a role model. And that she loved getting to meet people and having fans write her messages and send her pictures. And she really tried to go all the way and appear super kind and innocent to the point that if you didn't know who Nadia was, you might think she actually was innocent. But knowing what we do now, it all flips on its head and just seems very disingenuous and evil in all honesty. We have the same girl that we know, Nadia, saying she wants to train little girls to become pilots and offer discounted flight trainings, and is now getting put in contact with little boys and girls and is spending time with them, as well as impressionable young men and women who admire her and want to be just like her. This is the same chick who offers one-on-one interviews with her stewardesses, and fun fact, that is the longest word you can spell with only the left hand of your keyboard, stewardesses. But back to the topic at hand. The same woman offering those interviews and moan-filled advertisements is now being put in direct contact with impressionable children and young adults. I'm assuming you are seeing the conflict of interests here. Thankfully, someone archived this video for us so we can get a real example of the level of effect that Global Girl, quote unquote, is having on the flying community. And you're going to notice a trend that I very much don't like. Way too many kids for my comfort. This whole Loop thing though seems to come to an end in 2019 when Epstein was arrested, and there's been basically no updates or no new information on the site since then. And Nadia's socials are all gone except for the archive posts that we've been looking at. And depending on which Loop link you click, you might even find out that the website now says that it's under maintenance. However, despite these setbacks, not the entire trail has gone cold. Loop itself stopped operating ostensibly, but not in reality. When researching the business filing information, a second name for the company popped up for me, where although still technically named Loop LLC at the end of the day, they have this other name which they can sell products and services under, and that other name is Aviatri, or Aviatrix, but without the X. Very creative naming here, I know, guys. Okay, interruption from me, number 2 today, but altogether like number 4 at this point. I learned that the business filing address for Loop, if you look back in history, was originally set for Mark Epstein's building in New York, and we all know Mark Epstein is the suspicious brother of Jeffrey Epstein that was supposedly somehow an artist and then became a multi-millionaire real estate developer in New York. Just wondering where he got that money from. Besides the point though, another direct connection back to Epstein and the trafficking, and on top of that is that the same building owned by Mark was also a place where Epstein had rooms and apartments where he would take these quote-unquote model girls and have them stay there to take advantage of them. A whole lot of stuff's coming full circle here. Some of those girls, in fact many of those girls, were in all likelihood supplied by Nadia herself, maybe even through this pilot identity and the model identity. Crazy stuff, you guys. And you should not be surprised to find out that, like the name suggests, this business has been aimed at females, specifically female pilots or females curious about becoming a pilot. And this site, much like Loop, offers discounted lessons, flight school help, funding help, free courses, paid courses, and everything in between to help you on your pilot journey. And unsurprisingly, a bulk of the images on here are stock images, including the second photo in this series of a chick wearing little clothing, dramatically walking away from a plane on a runway. This is the same chick on the Loop website, but just a different picture taken at a slightly different time. However, if that wasn't the giveaway that they are connected directly, Nadia herself appears on this very same website, telling us that this is definitely hers as well, although admittedly the different parts of the site are strewn across the internet, so it made it extra difficult for me to actually confirm this was hers. All this to say though, it would appear that after the Loop links were made when Epstein was hit again in 2019, Nadia then hopped onto a proverbial escape raft and tried to cover her butt with this other front company, that being Aviatri. The Instagram for Aviatri is still live, so I thought maybe there's a chance I could learn more. I doubted it, but I still thought it was worth a shot, so I put my alter ego Jesse Hines, the aspiring pilot, and reached out across basically all of their platforms trying to get in contact with anybody. However, despite days of waiting, no one from Aviatri has gotten back to me, which was so rude and forced Jesse Hines back into her shell and former career of selling fent on the street. In short, Aviatri is another empty front company. I take these business reporting sites with a grain of salt, but I wanted to also add in here, supposedly it was reported that Aviatri did over $5 million last year in annual revenue. I doubt that's true because these are typically wrong, but if it is true, I'm gonna have to wonder where those 5 M's just came from. Let's continue. At this point, there was really only one more thing I could think of for us to go down to see if I could get all the information possible about Nadia, if she's still with us, or if there was anything else relevant that we needed to know about her. At which point, I went to a website that I won't name and did a quick search I won't describe, and got a verifiable list of Nadia's closest connections via publicly available data that haven't seen the light of day. And you wouldn't recognize these names on CNN or Fox, Slopaganda. They're not going to mention them ever. And the only one that's seen attention is an Epstein accuser that this platform linked to Nadia. So I decided to take an hour, maybe it was 2, I won't lie, out of my day, whip out the burner phone and call every single one of the people listed. And what I got in terms of responses was rather surprising. So out of the numbers I dialed, about 7 picked up. And out of those 7 that picked up, every single one, without fail, upon hearing the name Nadia, or in some cases before I even got her last name out of my mouth, they hung up on me. And many of them very obviously lie to me because these lists of connections don't lie. The error rate is like 5%, and I've cross-verified most of these people, and I know for a fact that they all seem to also know each other and not just Nadia. And they share many of the same friends, and despite all of this, there were people who were still willing to deny vehemently that they didn't know her, and even got a little nervous at the idea of someone connecting their names. And here are a few of my favorite calls.
Hello?
Hey, I'm calling about Nadia Marcinko.
I'm in the wrong number.
I'm calling for any information you might have on the matter. Is this...
No.
Are you familiar with who I'm talking about? I have those 2 names. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Hello?
Hey, is this...
No, sorry.
Don't you try me like that, you cheeky bimbo. Do you not know who I am?
Hello?
This is Roger. I'm writing a story about one Nadia Marcinkova, and I was wondering if you were familiar with her.
No, sorry.
Can I ask a follow-up question really quick?
Sure.
Nadia Marcinko, that name... Ho-ho! Yup. That's what I thought. I'm sorry, I think our call got cut off. That's very awkward.
Your call has been forwarded to voicemail. The person you're trying to reach is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up.
Your voicemail box is glitched or you're on the phone right now. Either way, give me a call back. I know that you know Nadia, so I would appreciate any information you could give me. And you'd make the 4th person who has hung up on me at the mention of her name. Thank you. Have a great day.
Hello?
I'm calling about Nadia. Are you serious? Can it be more obvious than that? Nah, you're not. It's going to be that easy. You best not pick up this phone then.
Hello?
You are the 5th person to hang up on me at the mention of that name. Do you have any information for me? I'll call you back in a minute there. I think she has something she wants to tell me.
Yeah. Hey, what's up? It's Joe Jonas. You have reached the voicemail. In a message, she's not here right now. But make it detailed. Don't forget your name or you're from. Or not what you'd like to eat.
The mailbox is full and cannot accept any messages at this time. Goodbye.
Funny they deny it, but hey, maybe they are in the 5% gap where this incredibly efficient data scraper was wrong about their connections to Nadia and Epstein. You know, after I got the contact list in part from another known employee of Aviloop who also worked at Aviatree, and I also want to keep in mind that most of these people were in their 20s to 30s, and so despite living in the current culture and in the worst economy in history, they all have to be living in high-end houses or apartments, most of which cost a minimum of $1 million to the highest I've seen that pushes $3 million. Not going to give any more information than that, but that seems like they have some serious money despite having no meaningful employment records to afford such a home. Call me cuckoo though, but Coop thinks something is up. And always follow the money.